I had worked in Israel, and I had a very good friend. He's passed away now, called Colonel Digley. And Colonel Digley was one of the members of the Entebbe raid. He was an overall commander, and he was really well respected. And he was an old guy, and he's very firm kind of guy. And I went over there and I said, "Hey, Colonel, how you doing? We're gonna go to Jordan. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We're gonna pick up this girl. Blah blah blah. And we're gonna cross the border." And he goes, "Oh, is that right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Come with me." So he took us to the border and he gave us a tour of the border. He said, "You see that? Those are tank traps. You see that? That's minefields. You see those recon guys up there? The snipers are up there. Now, how do you plan on getting across here?"
Have you ever found yourself struggling in the midst of life thinking, this is not what I had planned or hoped for? Well, then you are not alone, my friend. Life has its ups and downs, no matter how well we thought we planned things out. Welcome to the Redeemed Podcast, where we will encourage others through personal experience, even when life does not go the way we planned it. Through various interviews, you will hear amazing stories of lives being transformed, even in impossible situations. My name is Lauren Burns, and I am the host of the Redeemed Podcast. I am so excited to welcome Don Feeney today. It's quite remarkable that I'm getting to sit and talk with him, and I get to share what he did in my life. We hear the word hero often, but he is a true hero, especially in my life, because I have to say, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be a mom. I wouldn't have the career I have or a relationship with my own mother if it wasn't for this man risking his life and saying yes. Please welcome Don Feeney to the Redeem Podcast. Don has quite an extensive military background.
Founding member of the First Ranger Battalion, a member of 5th Special Forces Group, Green Berets, and a founding member of 1st SFOD-Delta, which is Delta Force.
Thank you, Don, for helping me out. Don, will you share a little bit about how you came into my mom's life? You showed up. Every single person my mom talked to over and over again said, "Ma'am, you're never going to see your daughter again." When my father kidnapped me and took me to Jordan, what I understand is there's no treaty between the United States and Jordan. And so our military, our police could not help her. And they just pretty much said, "We can't help you. Good luck. You may never see your daughter again."
Correct. Correct. And it still happens. By the way, it still happens today. I got out of the military in 1986 to start my own company. And we started our company to train police officers because we were ex-Delta Force and SWAT training was big back then. We had put our name out throughout the community in Washington, D.C. that we were a company with ex-Delta Force members and Rangers and Special Forces, Green Beret guys, and we were looking to do training. The word got out. And then one day I'm sitting in my office and my secretary says, "Mr. Feeney, there's a guy on the phone by the name of Everett Alvarez. He said, you might recognize his name." I said, and she said, she wants to speak to you. Well, being ex-military, the name Everett Alvarez is well known. Plus, I went to the SEER course in Brunswick, Maine, which is a POW training. They teach you how to be a POW. They basically beat the daylights out of you and teach you not to give up. So I knew Everett Alvarez's name. And by the time I picked up that phone and answered, I was standing at attention. And I said, "Yes, sir. What can I do for you?" He said, "Well, do you know who I am?" I said, "Yes, sir. I know who you are." And he started to explain that he had a situation he wanted to talk to me about a girl who was kidnapped and taken to a foreign country. And I just said, "Okay, where?" And he said, "Jordan." I said, "Okay, when do you want me to start?" And he goes, "No, no, 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 no." He said, "We have to talk about it first." I said, "Okay, I'll come to DC. It's only a 5-hour drive from here." So he said, "No, I'll come to your office." And he must have said at least 10 times, "Don, this is not a sanctioned U.S. mission." He said, "I know you know who I am. I know you know I have contacts, but I want you to make sure there ain't no cavalry coming if this goes wrong." And I said, "I know I can find the guys that'll do it. We'll do it." And he said, "Okay, I'll be down there." So he comes down to the office and he meets me and Dave and he tells us your story.
Mhm.
And, we're sitting there like, "Okay, when do we start?" He said, "No, I want you to think about it." And we looked at him and said, "Number one, Mr. Alvarez," he kept saying, "Call me Ev. If you think it's the right thing to do, then we're going to do it. Now Dave's a card carrying Baptist Christian, and he says he wants to do it. I said, I'm a die in the wool Catholic boy that kind of jumps over the fence every now and then. But if he says God says we're going to do it,
Mm.
we're going to do it. He said, okay, well, I'll give you some time to think about it, and then I'll set up a meeting so you go meet Kathy. So we then called JD, and we talked to JD a little bit, and JD was like the rest of us, okay, when do we start? Let's go see Kathy. So we went down and we met Kathy. We found out the whole story. And by that time, we have my wife Judy working. She's doing the research on the background of Jerash. And so when we come back, we have more info. We met your mom in Texas, and we already knew we were taking the job. We did, even though we all said, the odds are kind of not with us on this.
Or
And
slim.
then me and JD looked at each other and said, well, we got off a burning airplane. God will watch after us. That's all we can say. And we told your mom we take the job.
Had you ever done a mission like this
Nope.
before?
You were the
This was
first
your
one.
first one.
You were the
Do
first
you
one.
know how long was I gone at this point by the time my mom met you guys?
So I don't know how long you were gone. No, I can't remember.
Okay, I wanna say I'd already been gone a month of her trying to search for someone to say yes and someone to be willing to try to put together a plan to pretty much kidnap me back, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
y'all met with my mom in Texas, you agreed and said yes, and then from there, you 3 went to Jordan to start
We
trying to
went to.
find.
I had worked in Israel, and I had a very good friend. He's passed away now, called Colonel Digley. And Colonel Digley was one of the members of the Entebbe raid. He was an overall commander, and he was really well respected. And he was an old guy, and he was very firm kind of guy. And I went over there and I said, "Hey, Colonel, how you doing? We're gonna go. We're gonna go to Jordan. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We're gonna pick up this girl. Blah blah blah. And we're gonna cross the border." And he goes, "Oh, is that right?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Come with me." So he took us to the border and he gave us a tour of the border. He said, "You see that? Those are tank traps. You see that? That's minefields. You see those recon guys up there? The snipers are up there. Now, how do you plan on getting across here?" I was like, maybe I better come up with a better idea. Smacks me in the cheek. He says, "Yes, you better, because you ain't coming across that field."
Mm.
So we went back with him. We talked to some of his people, and he was an amazing guy. He had contacts everywhere. I met the first Israeli jet fighter pilot. I met the first Israeli tank commander that fought in the 6 Day War, and they were all talking about your case.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
yeah, he's telling me what's going on, and he's telling them, and they're all going like, "So you are going to come across the border? What's the matter? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, Colonel Digley told me I can't do it." So one guy said, he's sitting there and he's real quiet, and he said, "The only way that you get across is a diversion." I said, "Okay, we can do that, but where do we cross?" And he said, "The Allenby Bridge." I still have the document. I don't have it with me here. I have two offices, my home office and my downtown. My downtown office, I have the letter that
Wow.
we got signed to get across the Allenby Bridge. So
Because you had to have that letter to be able to cross
without
over.
that letter, it would have been a gunfight. Exactly.
Wow.
So we got the letter, which I go into with your mom, because your mom did a great job that day. So anyway, we make this plan and we say, okay, we're going to go across the Allenby Bridge, but how are we going to do it? And the old saying in our world is, what's the first thing a sniper plans in his mission? And that's his escape. That's the first
Mm,
thing you plan, is your escape.
mm.
So me and JD started doing a recon of the Allenby Bridge. We went down the Allenby Bridge, and at the time, there was the police and the military would hitchhike all the time, going to and from their sites, because they would have to stand at checkpoints, and the government wasn't responsible for getting them home. And we figured that out. So we'd go to each checkpoint and show our IDs and talk to them and laugh. And sometimes, after we got to know them, we started bringing them coffee, sweets, cigarettes. And then they started asking, "Could you give me a ride to the next town? And I have to go home and I have no ride." "Yeah, sure, get in."
Mm.
So by the time we did the op, we had already given like 4 or 5 guys rides, knew half the checkpoint guys. They knew us. We told them we were there doing a review for a movie. And that made them feel like, oh, maybe you'll come by here with your camera and,
Yes.
we'll lead it.
Yes.
So once we figured that out, we were doing a recon for your location to see where you were at. And your mom had to come over because the information we were getting by phone from her wasn't jiving. And we knew it. We said, Kathy, it's been a long time since you've been here. You probably don't remember exactly. You may have to come here. So what we're doing, we're reconning the area, and JD sees you in the bus. He's seen your
Yes.
eyes,
Yes.
and he got so excited. And we're real nonchalant. We're in surveillance. Shoulders are down, heads down. We're walking slow. All of a sudden, I see JD just puff up like a bullfrog, and he starts walking towards me, and I'm going, "Uh-oh." I'm going, what's up? And maybe somebody behind me or something. And
Hmm.
he grabs me by the collar and he goes, I seen her eyes. And I'm like, okay, JD, you can let go of me now. You're choking me. He says, I seen her. I said, yeah, okay, calm down and don't make a scene. He says, he's on that bus. I said, which bus? He goes, that one that drove by. So we said, okay, that's
Wow.
the bus. But as
Mhm.
you probably know, there was other school buses. So we didn't know where that school bus stopped and started. And we were on foot, so we couldn't follow it. And once it got downtown Jerash, it was gone. We we had a block of where you were at,
Right.
and then we followed the bus. We followed the bus. I think 2 or 3 days. I can't remember. And one day we only followed it a couple of blocks because we didn't want to get burnt, as we call it,
Mhm.
identified. The next day we followed it all the way and said, okay, we need to start knowing where this thing goes. And by the grace of God and God, grace of God only, your bus left Jerash, the
Yes.
city, the town, and went all the way down this country road to pick up two kids at a farmhouse.
Yes. And Dawn, I don't know if you know this. I told my mom this later. The children that lived in that farmhouse had just started going to school with me a few weeks prior to you guys, hijacking that bus.
Well,
So, by the
there
grace
you
of
go.
God, it's
Grace of God
exactly
again.
right. Mhm. Mhm.
And of course, once we seen it turn around, we followed it back and it dropped you off at school. And one thing about the buses there, they always picked you up with the door right along the side. There was no going out the bus and crossing the street. They would go completely around the block to make sure they would let you out right in front of your door. So you only had to go from the bus to your doorway.
Mm.
There was no walking out front. So now we know where you're at. We know where the bus goes, and now we got to go get the bridge also. I went back with your mom, and we had some contacts in the Jordanian location that gave out the passes, and we had to put a show on. I was your uncle, okay, and your mom wanted to take you Israel for a tour, and then we'll come back. And of course, your father not being there, the guy was very, very hesitant. And your mom smoothed him. She says, look, me and my husband, we have some issues. He's let me take my daughter for a vacation, but I'm living here. And she laid it on this guy like honey. And he started to say, well, I need to make some phone calls. And then I said, look, guy, I said, this is going to cause problems. We're only going across down to Israel and coming back. What's the big deal? And once again, I say, by the grace of God, he picked up the paper and signed it. And we
Mm.
walked out of there. I was like, Kathy, I don't know if you realize we just pulled off the biggest ruse of the century.
Mm.
There's no way that guy should have signed that letter without calling his superior. We made sure you got on the bus. That's the first thing you do is make sure your target is where it's supposed to be. I was in the other. So then we followed it to the farmhouse. And then nonchalantly, no screaming, no hollering, I just pulled up in front of the bus and I said to the driver, hey, can you help me? And he's heard English and he looked at me. He says, you speak English only? I said, yeah, English only. Well, by that time, your mom and JD, well, I had his attention, had jumped out. And when he realized that they had jumped out and something was going on, now the whole time we're doing this, we're realizing we cannot kidnap a Jordanian because if we do, we could be extradited. So we had to plan this mission where we didn't take anybody but you. We didn't harm or get anybody else in danger. Okay. So now I'm not holding anybody hostage. I didn't abandon them. I didn't tie them up. We talked about taping them to the steering wheel, but that would be a form
Right.
of hostage taking,
Yeah.
so we didn't do it. Then we drove back towards Jerash, and they watched us go down. And Dave was down there with the other car, and then we swapped cars.
So they wouldn't recognize our
They
car.
wouldn't recognize the car. So then Dave headed for Amman by himself,
Mm,
and we turned around, went back past where the bus was at, and they had just found the keys.
wow.
We get down to the first checkpoint. Of course, one of the guys are on there we know, and he says, "Hey, you're going to give me a ride again?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." He got in the front. In the movie, he's in the back seat, but he was in the front seat. He drove with us. He talked the whole way. He didn't even care who was in the back seat. We got to the second checkpoint, no problem. We drop him off, and then we get to the Allenby Bridge. We show our documents, and I said, "When's the next bus leaving?" "Oh, well, we have to wait." I said, "I don't want to wait. I got an appointment I got to make in Israel. So can we go faster?" "Well, we have to have enough people to pay for the bus." I said, "How much?" He said, "Well, so many dinar, which is about 25 bucks." So I pulled out about $100 worth of dinar and said, "Well, can you leave now?" He says, that's where they got to think about the cat. He said, "Let me finish feeding my cat." I went like, "You can feed your cat after when you buy more food with this $100 I'm about to give you." So
Right.
he said, "You're right." He got in and we got on the bus. No sooner were we in the Israeli side, the Allenby Bridge got a phone call to stop all crossings. They just put the word out to stop all crossings. We were already on the Israeli side. The Israelis were going, "What are you doing here? What are you coming here for?" We had to tell the guys, "Look, this kid was kidnapped to Jordan." And of course, now they get suspicious. And I say, "Okay, wait a minute. Let me borrow your phone." Okay, and they're
Wow.
being a little snub. And I dial Colonel Digley's number. I say, "Hey, sir. Hey, it's Don. We're across the Allenby Bridge, but I have a problem." "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, these soldiers here give me a hard time about entering." Put them on the phone. So
Ah,
I said, "Colonel Digley would like to speak to you." I
yeah.
give him the phone. They go, "Colonel Digley?" And I said, "Yes." They snap to attention. Next thing you know, I hear this church service going on. And it's
Yes.
JD with a bunch of people who are on a church tour, and he had told them what was happening, and they were all singing and hallelujah and having a good
Yes.
old time.
Yes.
The soldier dropped the phone, hung it up, and said, "I can get you through very quickly, sir. We need to call you a car to get you out of here right now."
You're like, "Yes, please. Thank you."
"Yep, thank you very much." Smile on my face the whole time.
Man. And then was it that evening that there was a big party, or is it the next evening?
We were doing security for two operations: Rambo 3 with Sylvester Stallone, and Iron Eagle 2, I think, with Lou Gossett Jr. Well, I had transferred from Rambo because it was almost over, and I was doing the protection for Lou Gossett. And we used all Lou Gossett's cover to get things done in Israel.
Mm.
And we thought we had him fooled, and he didn't know about it. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we show back up at the Dan Tel Aviv after being gone a few days and going back and forth. And he sees me. He goes, and Lou Gossett, he just passed away, by the way.
Yes.
He's a big guy. He's a
Yes.
basketball player. He goes, "Hey, Feeney." "Yes, sir. Come here." And he grabs me, puts his arm around my shoulder, says, "So when am I going to meet the little girl and mother that you went and snatched at a Jordan using me as a cover?" I went, "Hmm. So you found out about it?" He goes, "Yeah, I
Wow.
did." He said, "But I want to meet him." I
Yeah.
said, "Okay." Well, so I talked to your mom, and he took you to dinner that night, and
I remember.
he had a full shindig for you. He was as happy
Yeah.
as a pig in doo doo. He was like really glad that he was part of it, and we told him.
I remember him giving me that red rose.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. I kept
Yeah.
that rose for a long time.
So he was happy, and he said, "I know why you didn't tell me." He said, "But I would have said yes anyway."
Mm.
I said, "Well, it wasn't." I said, "Be honest with you, Lou." I says, "It wasn't that. If something went bad, I didn't want you to be
Yes.
have a problem with it." So he said, "Yeah,
Right.
I understood." But he was happy about it.
That is so, so neat. Dawn, I know after my mission, you did other missions. What has God shown you in your own personal life through all the things that you've done? Because you've sacrificed. If you guys would have been caught, you would have been thrown in jail or maybe something worse. So, what have you seen God do in your life through all of this?
Well, in the beginning, we just thought that God had put us on a mission to do what we had been trained to do. I mean, Uncle Sam spent a lot of money training us, and we were really good at it.
Hmm.
Once we did your case, you would not believe the amount of calls we got.
Hmm.
But not all cases are, number one, doable or should be done, because
Okay.
not everybody tells you the truth when they're
Yeah.
telling you. We used to have a saying, there's three sides of the story. There's your side, there's my side, and there's the truth. We have to figure out where the truth lies. In yours, it was pretty simple because your mom had all the documentations
Hmm.
that we knew, and and she had phone calls where she was talking to Ali, and he was telling her, "Yeah, you're never going to see her again." On other missions, we actually had a lot of prayer time. We say, "Okay, we're going to think about taking this one." I don't want to get too long into the story, but we
Sure.
used a sailboat, and my partner Eric Haney on this mission, he was teaching me how to sail because I didn't know anything about sailing. We get close to Sicily, and a storm breaks, and Eric is sleeping. I'm driving the boat. We have a guy who was a pilot. His first GPS had just come out, and the storm is raging now. And I got this thing trimmed out, and it's smoking through the water. It's a sailboat. And he looks at me. He goes, "Well, Donnie, you made Eric a liar." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "This thing won't do past 10 knots." He said, "We're doing 11 and a half knots." About that time, I hit a wave. It put that boat in the air. Eric comes flying out of bed. He jumps up, screams at me, "Drop the sail, you idiot." So I dropped the sails. We were going around the west side of Sicily when the storm hit.
Hmm.
We wind up 100 miles short of the end of Sicily the next morning. It blew us that far off course. So we pulled in. This guy comes up and he starts talking to me again in Italian. I said, "Sorry, buddy, I only speak English." He goes, "What for you go out in the morning with the storm like it was?" I said, "No, we didn't go out in the morning. We were out last night." And he starts, "Mamma mia, mamma mia, you get up to that chapel and you say thank you to Mother Mary." I said, "Where's the chapel?" He goes, "One block up to the left." I went to the
Hmm.
chapel.
Wow. Wow.
Boys do. I pulled out a bunch of Italian dinar or whatever they use in lira, and I threw it in the thing and I lit some candles. I said, "I didn't know how bad that was." This guy told me it was the worst storm they had had in years.
Oh my goodness.
It was bad. So we took missions and a lot of prayer and a lot of things that we can tell people, they just don't believe it. When Judy was part of Tunisia, the other boat, other mission, we were already in Tunisia, and she told the guys, "You're going the wrong way," and they go, "No, no," and she said, "Okay, I'll trust you." And then she said a prayer. I got these two boat captains, and these guys are telling me they're going the right way, but I know it's not. Am I right? And she said she heard the word. "Nope, you're right.
Hmm.
Correct him." He picks up the compass they were using and he bangs it, and the compass points the right way.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he goes like, "Thank you, Lord."
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Just time and time again.
Time again, it
Amazing.
happened in almost every mission. It was somewhere along the line you knew that the Lord was looking after you.
How many children were you guys able to rescue?
We've done a total of 36 recoveries,
Wow.
but that doesn't count all kids. Some were
Okay.
cons where we conned people out of countries. Some were grown people that we helped get out of countries.
Mhm.
I think on the kids side, there's probably 8 or 12 kids that we call aggressive recoveries, like
Mhm.
yours,
Mhm.
where we had to actually go in. Judy did 2, one in Nicaragua and one in Mexico. She led
Wow.
the team for those 2.
Don, what would you say to the person listening that is going through their own difficult situation? Maybe not losing a child to a kidnapping, but just, hard life stuff. What would you say to that person to encourage them?
Well, first of all, life's not fair. That's
Yeah.
number 1. Okay. Second thing is you have to have faith. If you don't have faith in yourself or God, you're going to lose out on a lot. I mean, to this day, I'm a churchgoer. And if I get spare time, if I have a hard day, a hard week, I'll go sit in there and just sit down and say, "Okay, Lord, what am I doing wrong? Tell me," you know, and you'll hear the word, you'll hear it. He'll say to you, "Okay, dummy, don't do this again." You know, "Okay, I know I shouldn't have done that, but I did it." You have to have time in prayer. I think
Yeah.
everybody needs time in prayer. This is the desk I sit at in the morning. And that's the Bible that's been around the world with me.
Wow.
It was beat up.
That's awesome. Don, I have the book you had written on the very first page, Deuteronomy 6:12 through 13.
Yep.
And it says, I'll get emotional reading it. But it says, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, or we'll say Jordan, out of the land of slavery. Fear the Lord your God, serve him only, and take your oaths in his name. You wrote that, I don't know what year, years and years ago. I'm 43 now. And and I get to sit here and talk to you now after all these years. You haven't seen me since I was what, 7 years old,
7 years
breastfeeding,
old. We
you know
dropped you off, and we hadn't seen you since. We
Yeah,
kept track of you. We knew your mom was running around trying to move around and stay moving.
we did.
Al
We moved a
Zapata
lot.
kept us track. He kept track of you all the time, so it was good.
Yeah, we changed our last name and we lived in hiding for many, many years. But still, God's so good to redeem my story. And me, the purpose of me sharing is to encourage others. But the thing I'm learning is God does so much more for you, for me sharing my story. I've gotten to talk with you and JD and Dave, and I never even imagined these doors opening. And God's just like, sit back and watch and see what I do.
That's right. Yeah.
So I can't tell you thank you enough. There is no words to
Well,
say, but thank you.
thank you. It goes to God, 'cause it was the grace of God that got us out of there.
Well, I thank you too for sharing and for being on today.
No problem. Glad talking to you. I really appreciate it.
I don't know about you, but to hear Don talk about all of his different missions, his expertise, the things that he has gone through throughout his life, but to still say, I have to rely on faith, I have to spend time praying, and to rely on God. That is refreshing to me. From a man that has so many years of experience, expertise, knowledge, but still, when he knows that he needs to run to somebody for protection and guidance, he goes to God. He even has his wife praying over him. And he depends on her as well, knowing that she is a woman of faith and that if she says that God told her something, then you better believe he's going to listen. So I hope that brings you some encouragement today. We all need faith. We all need to stop and say, God, what are you saying to me? What are you calling me to do? Do I stay? Do I go? Do I move? Do I rest? If you're like me, I'm a fixer, I'm a doer, and it's hard for me to stop and pause and pray. That's not my first instinct. But that's what God wants us to do for the big things and the little things. He wants us to pray. It's a conversation between me and him, between you and him. And the more conversations we have with him, the more we get to know him. And the more we know the plan and the purpose he has for our lives. So I want to stop now and pray and have a conversation with Jesus over you. God, I thank you. I thank you for Don. I thank you for the time to be able to hear from him, to talk with him, and to be able to just tell him thank you. And for the listener today that needs that reminder to go back and to go to you and to lean into you and to find that time for prayer, if it's in their car, if it's in their house, if it's in the yard, wherever, Jesus, you don't care where we go to pray. You just want to hear from us. And so, God, for that person listening today that maybe it's been a long time since they've prayed, would you give them the willpower? Would you give them the strength? Would you give them the courage to stop and to pray? And when they pray, Father, would you speak to them right where they need to hear from you? You know all of us. You know our thoughts. You know our hearts. You know our needs. And God, I'm just asking that you would speak in a mighty way to each person listening, that you would draw them close, and that you would pour into their lives today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing these episodes. Thank you for telling your friends, and thank you for hitting the subscribe button on your Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening to these episodes, because I can't do this without you. I can't share God's word without you. And that's really what this is all about. It's about telling people about Jesus, reminding people how good God is, and to know you're not alone. Because sometimes in this world we think we're alone in our struggles, but I promise you, you're not. So I can't wait to share with you more fantastic testimonies. And if you have a great story that you would like to share, would you message me? You can find me on Instagram at lburnspt. I have a webpage, laurenburns.net, or Facebook, Lauren Burns Redeemed. Anywhere, any of those places, message me. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day.